सिंपली पेन टूल यूज किया और कुछ नहीं किया था बीच में?
Yeah, just a pen tool, nothing more. नहीं, कुछ भी नहीं किया. सिर्फ pen tool पे
ओके,
select किया, selected the layer, clicked on the pen
ओके,
tool, activated that, and drew
या,
my mask around the girl.
ओके,
ठीक है?
ओके, थैंक यू,
But you
ठीक है,
have to make
थैंक
sure you start at the very
यू.
first frame. That's not really a rule, but I like to start at a certain frame. It could be the first frame or the mid frame or the last frame.
ओके,
We're gonna go for the first frame for now. So I drew a mask around her, and now this mask, if you'll notice, remains in place, and the girl just moves on in the shot. We don't want that. We want the mask to move along with her. Open this drop-down menu for the layer that we're working on, and in the layer you'll see a mask drop-down thingy that has been created there because we have a mask there now. And within that is the mask that we've created. Multiple masks in there, and they'll all list up in this little mask drop-down menu thingy. So I've got the mask selected, and you want to make sure you don't select the mask itself. You select the mask category here, the category drop-down thingy here, so that you can start moving the points. Otherwise, if I'll have this selected, I won't be able to move the points. I'll be able to move the whole thing, but not the points. If you want to be able to move the points, it's a weird thing in After Effects. There's no reason for it to be that way, but that's how it's been. You have to have this selected in order for you to be able to move the points on your mask. So now I want the mask to animate along with the girl. For that, I'm going to hit this mask path stopwatch. Wherever you see a stopwatch next to a certain property of something, it means that it can be animated. And in order to start animating that, I'll have to hit the little stopwatch button. As soon as I'll do that, it applies a key to wherever my time slider is. And there's a key right there. So that's my first key that's been applied to that mask. We've got this one selected and not this one. So I'm going to select the right one. And move along in the timeline a few frames like that and readjust the mask, making sure my subject isn't getting cropped out. The reason why we're doing this is because we want the most limited shades of green in our shot before we can go in and key it out, because that will give us the most optimal results. Keep going, readjust the mask. Like that. Make sure I have the mask wrapped snugly around her, because I don't want too many shades of green in there. Oops. I just double clicked there and it selected the whole thing. So make sure that doesn't happen. And you'll notice for every change I make, it makes a key down here on the timeline. This wouldn't happen if you didn't have this little stopwatch button activated.
Sir, are you doing this frame by frame or just skipping two, three
No,
frames?
I'm just skipping a few frames. Yeah. I don't need to go frame by frame on this particular footage, basically. Plus, she shot on a green screen, so it's far more convenient for a VFX artist to work on a green screen plate than a live action one, because then you can just get rid of all the green and you've got a clean plate for you to work on. Just a few more frames. And yeah, I'm just going to be very loose with my mask here. Not worry too much about the shape. Okay, let's see how it looks. Let me fit that on screen. You can fit your imagery to make it the same size as your window here by going into this menu and selecting fit. Or you can use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So let's hit spacebar and play this and see whether everything is going okay. And so far so good. And yeah, just a few more frames and we'll be done with this one shot. And then we can start working on the green screen part. Again, make sure you don't take too much of the green in the mask around her, because that will help us with our keying. So that seems all right. And we can now continue with our keying. So now I'm gonna select the same layer that I was working on where I made the mask and right click on that, go into effect, into keying, and select key light 1.2. So once you've got that selected, you'll have key light open here as an effect, as any other effect would open up. And here you'll see a little screen color option here that has a black box. Next to it is a eyedropper tool. If you select that, you can pick out the color from your imagery that you want to get rid of. In this case, it's the green color. So I'm going to zoom in and try to pick the closest green around my subject. Probably somewhere around a part of her that has a well-defined form of her shape. So probably around here. So I'm just gonna take the eyedropper tool and select this green shade here. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice that all the green is gone. But it's not perfect. There's still this weird haze around her that we're gonna have to go in and fix. So here are a bunch of options that you can start with. Here's a screen gain. A screen gain kind of helps overall cut back or bring in the green shade. Or you can go into screen mat from here. You can see final result, which gives you the final result of the keying that you applied. You can also switch to screen mat from here. That will show you everything in pure black and white. This way you can easily figure out which parts of your image are translucent and which parts are opaque. And we want to make all the negative space as black as possible and our subject as solid white as possible. And make sure that there's no grays in there, otherwise it's going to give you that ghostly effect. We don't want that. So let's go and start working on the values. The first value that I'll work on is the screen gain. And make sure I get black around her as possible, probably around. And I'm going to leave screen balance as it is. And I'm going to move into this, the screen mat menu. Here you'll find a bunch of additional options that you can use to further optimize your keying. And here's clip white. If I cut down on the clipping white, it brings back a lot of the white color into the scene. White shade that determines the how solid an object is. And you want to make sure the girl is as solid as possible. So make her as pure white as you can. And I'm going to leave this at 80. And I want to go back into my final result and see how things look. One more thing I want to do is, because I can't really tell much with the black background, so I'm going to have to add a different shade to the background. The way I can do that is I can right click in an empty area around that layer space and go into new, hit solid, and here by default it's going to be white. You can choose whatever color you want. I'll go with white and hit OK. And now you've got a white solid. And you want to make sure that this layer is all the way down here underneath our footage, because this is the way these layers work. Is the order of the way things are placed in your scene is determined by the stack order of your layers. So whatever's underneath will be behind whatever's over it. So yeah. And now I can see the girl's form better, and now I'll be able to work on the precise values that I need to get her edges to be as refined as possible, get her keying going. You can see that it's not really perfect. The edges, they're very blurry, plus there's a lot of spill. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my replace method from soft color to hard color, because then what soft color does, it kind of blends your keying to the backdrop to give you like a middle point to work with. But I'm going to go with hard to give you a sharper, a much more solid look to your character. So once I've done that, I can. Please turn your mic off. Whoever that is. Yeah, thank you. All right, so this here's another option in here, which is screen shrink and grow. It helps me trim trim down the edges, bring them up. So I'm going to use that and trim down the edges a little, and it still seems a little blurry for some reason. Let's go back into the screen mat, see what's going on. Okay, I can see that this thing right here that's sticking out of her belt is not as defined as I would like it to be. You see that? So I'm going to cut back on the screen gain and maybe shrink some of the edges in some more, -1. And yeah, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on the timeline to where she gets closer to the camera and see how she looks over there. So yeah, for now it's all right because we'll be working on her anyway when we'll be color correcting and adding a background and everything. So for now she seems okay. I want to do the same to the next one, which is this one. And this should be fairly easier because she's really close to the camera, which means there's a lot of detail to her that we can use to our advantage. So I'll select the layer that is this shot. As you remember, I split the same shot into two different shots on two different layers. So this first layer was the one we were working on, and now we've moved on to the second layer. So right here, I want to apply the same key light effect. Pick out a good shade of green right somewhere near her. And that's what it gives you. And now you want to go back into screen mat and make sure that there's no grays. I'm going to increase the screen gain just a bit, maybe to 110. Don't need too much of the screen gain because there's plenty of detail in the imagery to not knock us off our values in that sense. So now that we have that, let me fit this on screen. I'll go into screen mat, start getting rid of the gray transparency. Cut back on the clip white a little, so that's better. I'll leave it at 60, 65. I'll go back into my final result and see how things look there. So yeah, already you can tell there's this weird black outline to her that I want to get rid of. So I'm going to shrink that down by going shrink, cutting back just a bit so her contours are not as, they don't look like it's lines drawn around her. So that seems a little better. And I want to make sure that I got her hair right. And right here is the problem here. So we're going to work on that. And let's clip the white a little. Sorry, clip black. And gotta work on the hair there. That these hair strands are like the bane of all VFX artists because it's really hard to get the values down for the hair strands and the character. So yeah, this is something you're gonna have to really work on and nail all the values down to like the exact decimal point. Because yeah, that's how it is. So I'm gonna try to do that. Could take me a while to nail down because it's all trial and error in the end. So you want to make sure that you figure out the best values for that shot.
Sir?
Yep.
But if you're working on the values for the hair, so बाकी नहीं उससे डिस्टर्ब होंगी कि अगर आप थोड़ी ओवरडू कर दें बालों के चक्कर में.
Yeah.
So won't the rest of the frame be affected?
Because it's gonna look like a cardboard cutout. That's the problem. You don't want her to look like a cardboard cutout. Okay? Which have really jagged edges, really sharp edges. You don't want that. You want this little bit of softness to the edges so that there's a certain roundness to her. वरना वो पूरा cardboard cutout की तरह लगेगा. The edges, soft edges give you a certain three-dimensionality of your form, right? Than hard edges. So the hair strands are very important to get going. So this is fine for now. We can keep working on this as we go on with the rest of our work. So let's just go in and bring in a quick background. And I'm going to go and select project from here, which is my project window where my composition ends up, where all the resource files that I'm using end up. And this here is the composition that we're working on currently. And you'll know what compositions are in just a moment. Let me just import the background image that I want. So this here is the background image that I think will be suitable for now. So let's go in. And it's the same background we used with the third years when we were working on Nuke with them. in the online session. So this is what it looks like now, and I'll be further be able to see what's wrong with my image against this background. And I can see that there's a hard line around her in this one, and in this one, let's see how the hair strand looks. Because you don't want any popping in your scene, so that looks all right, I guess. The hair strand, little hair strand sticking out. You don't want any popping in the image in your keying. Popping is basically when your edges start giving this weird bubbling effect. You don't want that. That means your values are not completely optimized in your keying. And here is the dark edge again that we were going to work on. So this is the dark edges that we want to work on and make them a little softer. So I'm going to go in and maybe cut back on the edges or maybe bring some more of them in. Some of the form on the nose. But then again, she's really far back in the scene there, so that might not matter. What might matter though is when she gets close to the camera, when you can see more of her form. So, but I'm gonna start from here though, because I want to be able to find the best balance between when she's further back in the background and when she's close to the camera. And if I want to be really precise, I can go in and start keying the values for my key light, which means that then I'll go and start changing the values on the fly as the shot moves on. As she's coming closer to the camera, my key values will also change on the fly in that way. But that's advanced keying, and you can do that on your own in your own spare time. I'm just gonna get the right balance down for now for the overall image. So yeah, as you can see, there's some dark lines there that we're gonna have to get. Yeah, we're gonna have to rid ourselves off, and yeah, let's start working on those. So I'm gonna cut back on the outlines a little more. -2. Makes it a little better. -1.5 should be okay. All right, that seems better. And let's see. Mm-hmm. Edge is a little hard, a little sharp. So I'm going to add a bit of screen softness to it, 0.2 maybe, and a little bit of screen pre-blur. A screen pre-blur is basically it gives your keying an overall blur, so it kind of helps put smooth gradients into your keying, which kind of overall balances your scene in that sense. So if I just hit one in there, that should be enough for us to kind of smooth things between the key values. And yeah, let's see if we can figure the edges out a little better. So cut back a little more, a little more. 147. I didn't cut too much. 145 should be okay. And screen softness, and I can deposit a black and white value in there. So if I want to add some values in there, like black and white values to my keying. Regardless, I'm not going to spend too much time keying her out and everything because I already have a file saved that I was working on before where I got nailed down the values right eventually. So let's go to that project. We can just keep working on the same file. I think we'll just work on the same file. I'll save this as session. So it's so I know that's our online session that we're working on and not the demo that I had before. But I could always show you that in the end, what I worked on. So anyway, this is fine for now. Let's move on. Let's see what she looks up close. So that is acceptable. But again, her form, the nose is bothering me, so we're going to work on that. Cut back on the white, bring back some of the white in. So that kind of helps. Bring some of the white in. Yeah, I'm just going to go back to the file because I have better values in there. It'll be easier to work on those. So let's just save this one. I'll open the file I had before. So I did pretty much the same thing I just showed you guys in this file. but it's much better keyed out because I've got the right values nailed down in here. As you can see, it's 125, 34. There's a lot of values that I've messed around with to get the keying to work. Like I said, it's all trial and error. Every shot will have a different keying uh, set of key values and stuff. So you have to go in and kind of figure out the best key light optimization for every shot. So right here is where I've got her hair strand and everything right. So it kind of helps blend in a little better. Again, remember that bubbling effect I told you guys about? You can see it in her cheek right here. So we're gonna go in. But first, let's work on this shot. And now, assuming that you've being done right, you can go in and start blending your background and your character together. But first things first, the background seems a little too desaturated, so we're gonna work on that. So let's select the background layer. There's two backgrounds I have in here, by the way, and I'll show you the other one just now. So I bring the background in, and let me just bring it in again. So I have a background, and I bring it in here, and this is how it's gonna turn up. Okay, there's a layer, and make sure that you've got it underneath whatever it is you want to be on top of the background.
Spends the most money.
Sorry? Didn't catch that. Anyway, and then for the next shot, I did the same thing as I did splitting the two shots, where I took the same background, put it on another layer, but this time around, I scaled up the layer and matched it up to her perspective from this shot to this shot. And I just used the same image, scaled it up, and placed it in a way that makes sense in the perspective somewhat. And now I'll just delete this layer that I brought in to show you guys. So now that we have that, and in order to scale it and scale up and move objects around in your scene, all you got to do is go into that layer, and here you'll see the properties for that layer in the transform menu. Here you can choose an anchor point, which is your pivot point for that object, position in the scene, which means that you can move the object around. I'll go to that shot. Yeah. Which means you can move the object around like that in X and Y dimension. And scaling is basically scaling it in and out. You can either do it proportionately or disproportionately. It's all up to you. And then there's the rotation, how much rotation you want to give that image or video. And there's opacity. Transparency levels, basically, the alpha. But there's one trick that I've applied here for this particular background, is that I switched it to a 3D layer. Now, in order to turn a 2D layer into a 3D layer, you need to have this little cube activated next to that, in that layer where it's got the cube column there. So I've got this little 3D cube here. Now, the reason why I have a 3D cube there is if I were to bring the actual background in and show you the difference, this is what the actual background looked like, okay? And as you'll notice, that the perspective isn't lining up to her feet. And that throws off the illusion of her actually being there. So what I did was I turned that layer to 3D by hitting this little cube icon. If you hit this box here, a cube shows up. That means your layer is now 3D. Enable these two layers down here. And also this one. So now this layer has been converted to 3D. You won't be able to tell right off the bat as soon as you hit the cube. The way you can tell is you can open up its transform options again, and now it'll have an added Z dimension to it. Okay, now it doesn't. And as soon as I hit the cube, it's got an added Z dimension to it, which means it's now a 3D object. So now I can not just scale it and move it in XY dimensions, I can also do the same in the Z dimension. And that's exactly what I did here. I rotated the background just a little along the along the X rotation, like that. So I just gave it a rotation, a little tilt like that, so that I could somewhat match the perspective of the girl and the background. So now it matches a little better. That's exactly what I did with the background that I have here. So I'm going to get rid of this layer. We don't need that. So now that we have the perspective nailed and everything, we can go in and start color correcting this. Very rudimentary color correction just to bring these two shots together. Bring the girl and the environment to look like they're the same shot. For that, I'm gonna go in and first maybe color correct the background a little because it seems a little too desaturated, as I said. So I'm gonna, which one is it? This one. So I'm gonna select that layer, go back into the effects controls, right click, color correction, and there's a few basic color correction effects that you can apply. One of them should be brightness contrast, which is the probably first one you should go for. All right, my computer's kind of slow in showing you the results in real time. So I'm probably going to cut back on the lighting just a bit, dim it down a little, maybe minus 35 should be okay. And you can always disable and enable your effect to see the difference that it makes. And I'm probably going to increase the contrast just a bit, maybe 20, to kind of give my scene a little bit of a dynamic look, because there's several light sources in here that should give it a very dynamic lighting to it. And now that I've nailed that down, already you can see that my girl's starting to blend in there, and I want to further work on that. But one thing I'll notice is that the color temperature of my girl is not the same as the color temperature of the background, which is a little to the yellow tone. But to be really precise, I'm going to go in and go to the girls layer, which is this one, her brightness and contrast as well, kind of match her up. So I know that it's a brightly lit area, so maybe brightness of 20 would be better. Yeah, there we go. And I'll have to add a little bit of contrast to her, a contrast of 15 or less, 10, I guess. Yeah. And now I want to get her color tone right, color temperature right. But before I do that, I want to turn everything to black and white. So I'll go and click on it, right click on an empty area in my layer section, hit new, and create an adjustment layer. Now this is exactly like the adjustment layer you find in Photoshop, where you can add effects to that layer, and those effects will apply to everything underneath it, all the layers underneath it. So whatever effect I'll apply here, for instance, if I apply a black and white effect, I think you can find it in, yeah, color correction, and switch this to black and white, everything has gone black and white. And now it's easier for me to figure out the intensity of each tone in the scene, each kind of tone, like shadows, highlights. Where am I? Right here. Okay. Shadows, highlights, midtones. So it's easier for me to figure them out in grayscale than in color, because color throws off a lot of those values to our eyes, basically. So black and white just helps us see the lights and the darks better. So now that I have that, I know I want to go in and maybe add a bit of, yeah, I'll add a little levels effect to the background, color correction levels. Now this will help me kind of set the levels for how much the highlights I want and how much of the shadows I want in, or the midtones. So I want the shadows to be a little dark, a little more dense. That should be all right. And that's the overall gain on your image. And I can add a third one in there as well. I think you can add a third one in there. There should be a third slider. I can see two for now. Okay, let's turn off black and white, see how things look. Right here. I can even turn off the layer and all the effects are going to go away. Okay. That kind of helps put it better. And now I want to go in to the girl and bring back the black and white layer, adjustment layer that I had, go into the girl's layer, and start working on her levels. Don't want to make her so dark, so I just brought that up a little. Again, it's very minute values. You have to be very subtle in the changes you make. Make sure you don't go overboard with your effects. All right. Problem is the girl's too sharp compared to the background, and we can work on that later. In fact, we're going to work on sharpening the background rather than blurring out the girl because we want as much detail. We want to retain as much detail as we can in the scene. So now that we have that, let's turn off the adjustment layer. So that's what we have already. The lighting kind of matches better. And now I want to go in and get the color temperature right. So I'm going to select the girl because that's the layer that I want to change to bring closer to the background. Sorry, I just added another layer levels in there by accident. So I'm going to right click there and I'm going to go into color correction. And here's a tritone that we can put to good use. Now what this tritone does is it can help you pick out your highlight color, your midtones and your shadows, and based on that, it'll give you your result in the image. So I'm going to pick the highlights first, and hold on, let's see. The best highlights to pick would be somewhere in a bright area of the screen that represents the, the highest intensity of the light better. I think if I try here, you can see your color range in this little box right here as you move the eyedropper around. So I'll probably get that. And I'll also get my midtone, which I'll leave at same range. I'll leave this at, hold on, I told you that. Okay. And my shadow is not really black. It's somewhere on the background here. You can see that the shadows are not really black. They have a hue to them, and you want to get that. Probably this area right here. Let's get those shadows in. And I can cut back on this effect. Bit. 90. And in fact, I'm going to take her midtone from here and just leave it. Her midtone doesn't change as much. It stays the same color, but highlights and the shadows have been selected to be applied to our subject there. And I'm going to go in and further try to bring this closer to the color temperature of our background by selecting photo filter. And from here, I'm going to find the best shade. Hold on, I'm going to turn tritone off for now. And I'm going to try to find the best color temperature represented from here.
Sir, if the background had multiple lights and the character was walking from one to other
Yeah.
और different color की थी तो फिर की framing use करके हर light के हिसाब से set करेंगे.
No, not really. There's different tricks and techniques that you can use. Like you can have her on several different layers, and part of the frames could be on one layer that's lit differently, and the other frames could be on could be lit differently. So you can do that. Like I said, you can also change the keying on the fly. So similarly, you can change. Like I could have her walk from here to here, and that would be I would have her masked halfway through like that. So I can have this part of the background be dark and this part of the background be light. So it'll look like she's walking from darkness to a lighter area. We're gonna try to do that.
Okay.
So let's get this. So already I can tell that the color temperature has matched up. And let me go back to 0 and not preserve any luminosity. Yeah, that's much better. Maybe bring it up to 50%. So yeah, that kind of matches up better. 45% should be just enough. The right balance to get it going in there. Okay, bring the tritone back up. Back on the tritone, 75%. And with the original 75%. 90. Like I said, you have to have very subtle changes in there. And now I'm going to start working on the background again. And make sure my background is not as gritty looking and a little more enhanced in that sense. So I'll go and find, let's see here, color balance, levels, photo filter, vibrance. Okay, let's cut back on the vibrance just a bit. See what that yields. 5, cut them back on and bring up the saturation just a bit, not too much again. Again, you want to be very subtle. So maybe 2. I think I just canceled it out. Didn't make much of a difference. Let's just go back into our brightness contrast. This time around, increase the contrast just a bit. I hope you guys can see the subtle change in the imagery as I move the values. Go back into Pearl, add another brightness contrast in there, further work on the values. Right. Okay, I'm going to go back into Pearl's layer, and I want some more orange in there that represents the lighting of the background. And I want to add a little bit of vibrance as well to the girl. 65% should be okay. You see just a bit of vibrance. Pops out the colors a bit more on her. You can probably tell the difference. If I increase the saturation by 2, that might ruin the image. Not too much. 3 would be alright. Bring her closer. So that matches her up better, as you can already see. It matches her up better to the imagery. And now I want to work on the overall color correction for it. Now that I'm done individually color correcting the two to bring them together, in fact, I'm just going to add a bit more dark to the girl. A little more. So I'm going to go back into her levels effect and maybe increase the darkness on her, just like that. Yeah. That's too much. Maybe a little less. Lighter shade. Highlights level. She's obviously in this dark patch of an area. So that's better. So let's see what it looks like in motion. There might be a problem here, is it? Oh no, it's the reflection off her boots. So it is a lot better than what we had before. Start rendering it from here on. You can see this green line building up. As you play, what it's doing is it's basically rendering the whole thing out in its memory, so that the next time around you play it, it'll be smoother. It'll be at full FPS. So once it's done doing all of it, it's gonna jump back and play it in real time for you. So that seems better, but now we have to go in and color correct this bit here. For that, we're gonna, best thing about doing the first shot is that you can always kind of determine the values based on the first shot you worked on. for the next shot. So you don't have to go in and play the whole trial and error thing. You have an idea what you want to do here and then take it into the next shot. So that's exactly what we're going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same effects from the first background here. I'm going to hold shift on the keyboard and select all three effects. Hit Control C to copy them. Select the other layer where I want them and hit Control V. And all the effects should automatically apply to the other layer. But obviously, since it's a different shot, I'm going to have to treat this differently. So let's work on them now. And I want to go in and maybe cut back on the brightness a bit more. Minus 55 should be okay. I want to bring I want to retain some of the desaturated just a bit, or maybe just leave it at 0. Decrease the background a little more, so I'll bring it down to minus 60 and increase the contrast to 30. And go back into levels here. And I'm just tweaking the same values from my previous imagery here. Trying to get it to look like lighting is consistent. Brightness, contrast, like about, it's all about the combination of values that you have in different effects. Right. Yeah, I'll add some more lighting. Here's the other brightness contrast value that I can work on.
Sir, wouldn't it be better कि हम जो पहले यूज कर रहे थे settings वही background पे रहें rather than close?
No, because the perspective shifted, and when the perspective shifts, there's fog, there's atmospherics and stuff like that, so things will look different from a distance than if you were up close. So you have to apply the same principle in your
Oh,
VFX.
okay. Physical world वाले principles.
Yeah, because there's fog and everything, right? The closer you get,
Yes.
the more detailed it becomes, and the further you are, the more foggy it seems. So we're trying to
Yeah.
get that same effect going.
Okay.
And I'm gonna add a bit of a deep focus in there as well, because the image is very pixelated, not realistic looking enough. So I'm gonna blur that out and make it look like a deep focus shot. But let me just work on the lighting a bit more. See if the darks match up. I think they kind of do. And maybe add a bit of vibrance in there to fake enhance background. I think I might have to cut back on the vibrance. And go into color correction. No, go into blur and sharpen this time and find myself a Gaussian blur. This helps me evenly blur out the background. 3.5 should be a good blur effect there. And just overall add another brightness contrast in there to dim down the background a little more. Turn up the brightness. Turn up the contrast. All right. Okay, now I want to take the girl's effects from here, like I did with the background. So hold Shift, select all the effects, Control C, go into the layer where I want these effects, and hit, sorry. So same lighting has applied to the girl, and it's all consistent. But there's a Like she gets a little too bright here. I want to cut back on the brightness on her face and everything. It's a little too bright. Maybe the lighting was different for this shot. To this shot, maybe the camera guy or the light guy brought the lighting closer to her face to light it up more, and that throws it off because here you can clearly tell she's in a darker area compared to here. And that light jump is what we're going to try to control. Even though we can't fully control it, we can minimize that jarring effect. So let's go and work on that. And I'm not going to mess with these effects. I'm just going to go in and add an extra effect in there. So not black and white, brightness and contrast. Down in the brightness just a bit. -15. And that makes alright. That's much better. Increase contrast by 20. A little too dark, so we put back on brightness. Alright. And here's the vibrance node that we added, and we might want to increase that up to 90. Increase the saturation. Not too much, like I told you guys already. Subtlety is key. Let's try playing this on this one here. Someone say something? Okay. I hope my After
So
Effects
there's
doesn't crash.
someone said they're having trouble hearing you.
Okay, that's because I wasn't talking.
Okay.
So anyway, इसको और थोड़ा डार्क करता हूँ. Go into levels. Bring back dark shades a little more, just a bit. Okay. So that seems consistent to me. But there's not as much saturation here compared to here, so maybe we should cut back on there. Back on the contrast. That is much more consistent. What we wanted. Let's let it play all the way and see how it turned out. So that's how it plays. And then we move to the next shot. For the alignment, it's a little off. Is it off from this perspective? If I were to... Yeah, I think I should move this imagery down a little. But by the way, you can use your arrow keys to move things around as well. But I hope it will. There we go. Good. Because it was on a 3D layer, I thought it wasn't going to move with the arrows, but it did. And, I'll bring it down. Need 0, I'm sorry. I'm trying to match the perspective. That probably seems better. And let's see if her perspective still matches when she's walking. And that matches as well. Just like the girl to be a little more dimmed out, maybe. Or is that just me? If I were to zoom in, yeah, a bit of pre-blur in there for the key. And so this is what we have, guys. All right. I hope you guys were following through with the whole thing. Didn't feel too drained out.
Nope.
Chilo, simple enough, right? Enough?
So you have
Yes,
a
sir.
lot of patience.
Patience for what? To do all this stuff?
Yes, sir, आपका सिस्टम देख के मुझे उलझन हो गई है.
हाँ, मेरा system है इस तरह का, obviously. मगर it's not too bad. For these kind of effects, it's not too bad, really. असल में मेरा workstation खराब है, वरना it would have been a smoother ride. So the scene I wanted you guys to start Maya, basically. We were going to start Maya in university eventually, but then this whole thing happened, so now I have to resort to sticking to After Effects with you guys. So yeah, your final assignment will also be based on working on a VFX shot in After Effects, but it must not be a moving shot. We're not going to go into camera tracking and adding CG objects and stuff in there. We're just going to go for a simple VFX shot that's shot against a static shot against a green screen. That's it. Okay? Apply a 2D background to it. Just make it look as consistent as possible. Get the lighting right and everything. Make it look like it's one shot. Okay? That's all you got to do. And I hope all of you have computers. You all have computers, right?
Sir, कुछ लोगों के पास नहीं
No,
है.
sir.
You don't? Then you'll most probably have to borrow a laptop or a computer from someone. Or yeah, something along those lines. कहीं ना कहीं से तो computer मिल ही जाएगा ना? And it's hardly going to take you like a couple of hours. That's it. Hardly 2 hours. If you're really up for it, it's only going to take you 2 hours to do something like this. Huh? Sound good to you guys?
Ahmad, बताओ.
Sir, to
And
the
don't
people
worry,
who
don't worry about the deadline, because that will be way beyond into the future. So don't worry about that. You'll have plenty of time to work on your assignments, is what I'm saying. So we'll be tensions about me. Yeah.
Sir, I don't think it will be possible कि हम कोई लैपटॉप अरेंज कर ले अलग
Right.
से क्यों और मेरा लैपटॉप इट्स वेरी आउटडेटेड ऑलरेडी और उसमें जो प्रीमियर भी है वो भी मतलब 2011 का है.
अच्छा, Photoshop चल जाएगा?
Won't be possible कि मैं आफ्टर इफेक्ट्स से इस तरह का कुछ.
Photoshop चलेगा? Photoshop.
सर फोटोशॉप भी नहीं है मेरे पास.
But will it work on your computer?
सर आई डोंट थिंक सो क्योंकि मेरा जो प्रीमियर भी है वो भी बहुत
Photoshop
आउटडेटेड
तो
है.
चलना चाहिए.
सर आई कैन ट्राई लेकिन आई डोंट थिंक इट विल वर्क क्योंकि मेरा प्रीमियर भी क्रैश कर रहा है आजकल.
Chalo, here's what I'll do, because this is what I was afraid of when I discussed this with Sir Majid as well. Sir Majid ने भी मुझे advice किया था. Okay, for those of you that have a laptop, a working laptop where you can work on After Effects conveniently, you guys can work on your regular assignment, which is working on this VFX shot. Okay? For the rest of you that don't have a means to do this, the most you can do is resort to doing the same thing on Photoshop, but with a still image. उसी shot का still image लेके put something together in Photoshop so that at least you can go through the basic principles of how, you put things together and lighting and all that stuff. Can you do that much? Just one image, but make it look as good as you can. Yeah? Hello?
ठीक है सर, हो सकता है.
ये हो सकता है ना? For those of you that don't
Probably.
have After Effects, can work on Photoshop. For those that do, can work on After Effects. ठीक है?
Okay, sir. I think that's pretty okay.
All right then. So it's set then. So that was it for today, guys. Thank you for putting up with this for 1 hour almost. But yeah, this is something that I wanted to basically cover with you guys and kind of give you guys an overall wrap-up session of sorts before we conclude this semester. So yeah, I hope you guys found this demonstration useful. And
Sir,
I'll have the briefs for your assignment emailed to you guys, or maybe shared on WhatsApp, whatever will be more convenient. So yeah, I
सर
think this
मुझे ये
video was
पूछना
on
था
record.
आप भी
Yeah, पूछो.
ये ग्रीन स्क्रीन वाला किया सारा VFX, तो सर हमारा फाइनल सिर्फ
Yeah.
यही है अब और भी कुछ है या ये मेड है
Final
क्या?
सिर्फ यही है.
ओके सर.
Final है बस. This is
Okay.
your final. Okay? This is what it all depends on.
Okay,
This
sir.
session and this
Okay.
final project. Because things have changed drastically, as you've
Okay,
already
sir.
seen. So we're going to wrap up the
Yes, sir.
semester as smoothly as we can, given the circumstances. So
Okay, sir.
yeah, have fun with it
Thank you.
and get creative. That's all I want you guys honestly trying to achieve something. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. So
All
deadline
right.
क्या है?
Deadline मैं आपको कुछ document के अंदर कर दूंगा. Don't worry about the deadline. बहुत दूर है अभी, ठीक है?
Okay, so thank you.
No worries, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, thank you.
Take care.
Allah Hafiz.
Bye.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.